Well, US Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth has dismissed concerns about the conflict becoming a protracted war. In the first White House news briefing since Saturday's attacks, the Secretary of Defense insisted Washington has a clear mission and will not end up in another forever war.
America, regardless of what so-called international institutions say, is unleashing the most lethal and precise air power campaign in history. B-2s, fighters, drones, missiles, and of course, classified effects. All on our terms, with maximum authorities. No stupid rules of engagement, no nation-building quagmire, no democracy-building exercise, no politically correct wars. We fight to win, and we don't waste time or lives.
Straight to our Washington correspondent, Benjamin Alvarez-Gruber. Welcome, Ben. So Pete Hegseth there saying what they're not doing in this war, no stupid rules of engagement, no nation-building quagmire, no democracy-building exercises. So what has the administration said about what this war is doing? What's it for? What's it trying to achieve?
If the White House says they have a clear plan, they have not communicated it. This is the first Pentagon briefing where we heard from Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth and also the chairman of the Joint Chief of Staff, where Hegseth said, and I quote, "This is not Iraq, this is not endless." And we also heard fairly recently from US President Donald Trump during a ceremony at the White House where he once again called Iran an intolerable threat to the Middle East. He called it a sick and sinister regime, and outlaid one of the goals that they have of destroying Iran's missile capabilities. He said that 10 Iranian ships have been damaged, he said, are at the bottom of the sea, and also saying they will never have a nuclear weapon. So we're getting some information. President Trump has been giving interviews to US media over the weekend, but it's not clear what's the end game here. What is the next step? What was the plan of the White House once they finished one of the first aims? It was to kill not only the Iranian supreme leader, but also members of the top Iranian leadership. And it's not quite clear how long this will drag on, as this has definitely escalated already to a regional war.
OK, and it's been an air war so far. Has the White House ruled out boots on the ground?
President Trump was not clear on that, on saying that he has not ruled it out for now. It's not quite clear how this will continue. We have heard now, we had the confirmation earlier today from CENTCOM, that's the US Central Command, that 4 members of the US military were killed. Both Hegseth and President Trump said there will likely be more. But it's not clear what the strategy is, how long, how far they want to go there. We've seen this military buildup with these strikes over the weekend. And that's also something that Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth claimed. We did not start the war, even though it was the United States, along with Israel, that struck Iran first.
Tell us about political reaction to this attack, because it is noticeable that Congress was not consulted or involved.
That's right. We heard that Secretary of State Marco Rubio called the so-called Gang of Eight. Those are the highest-ranking members of Democrats and on Republicans on the intelligence side. So it's possible that the White House will try to sell this as a way of, we gave you a heads up. But of course, the outcry over the weekend, especially from Democrats, if you see it basically split on party lines, Democrats saying that it's up to Congress to decide when the United States goes to war, because this is a war. Even though the White House tries to portray this as an operation, this is a war with many players in the region involved. We've seen reports of explosions not only in Iran, but in many countries of the region, with more and more players involved. So this week there will be a vote in Congress, and there have been both Democrats but also Republicans calling on a resolution and telling the White House that they should inform that yet. But this is not just an exception. That's something that we've seen since President Trump returned to the White House. This administration has approved strike on 7 countries. We saw it during Operation Midnight Hammer that allegedly destroyed Iran's missile capability. So many here in DC are also asking, if there was destroyed, why was this strike necessary and why was it necessary now?
Thank you, Ben. DW Washington correspondent Benjamin Alvarez-Gruber. Gisou Nia is an Iranian lawyer focusing on international criminal and human rights law. She's director of the Atlantic Council's Strategic Litigation Project. She joins us from Washington, D.C. Welcome to DW. So we have Donald Trump leading a country that isn't signed up to the International Criminal Court, joining forces with an Israeli prime minister who is the subject of an international arrest warrant. Between them, they're launching a war against a country believed to have killed thousands of its own unarmed people. It's hard to know where to start.
Yeah, I mean, we're dealing with an attack on Iran that obviously is not legal under international law, nor the U.S.'s own laws on how you go to war. At the same time, it did result in the killing of Ali Khamenei, the former supreme leader of Iran, who is responsible for hundreds of thousands of deaths of Iranians over the years, and notably a massacre on January 8th and 9th of this year that is one of the worst single-day massacres in global history, in contemporary history. So it's very complicated. We see that Iranians inside Iran were celebrating the death of Khamenei and other regime officials. And yet now that the bombing campaign has gone on, there are Iranians who are really worried, who are fleeing Tehran and other major cities, and who are worried about where the scope of this is going to go and how long this will last. And we know that 555 civilians are reportedly killed within the past 72 hours. So there's a lot of fear and uncertainty about where things go.
And you are clear, are you, that this attack by the United States and Israel is illegal?
Obviously, there's going to be some, legal justifications put forward, and I've seen different creative lawyering to that effect. But no, I think that most international lawyers would agree that there is no legal justification for this. It's in violation of the UN Charter. But I will note that the international legal system also could not bring redress to the 92 million Iranians, many of whom have suffered international law violations and atrocity crimes committed against them by the Iranian regime over 47 years. So the international legal system was unable to address that in a meaningful way. And so we find ourselves here today.
And when we hear the US Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth saying that America, regardless of what so-called institutions say, is unleashing the most lethal and precise air power campaign in history without stupid rules of engagement and without pearl-clutching traditional US allies who hem and haw about the use of force. What goes through your mind when you hear that?
Obviously, we know that the Trump administration is not a fan of multilateralism, or at least multilateralism where they're not calling the shots. They've done everything they can to try to dismantle the UN, defunding 66 different parts of the UN. They have placed sanctions on the chief prosecutor at the International Criminal Court, as well as many judges and prosecutors. So we know they're not a fan of multilateralism. What I will say is that some of these strikes, of course, have been precise. They managed to take out the supreme leader and many other top officials of the Islamic Republic. So in that sense, many of the Iranian people are grateful. Some of them are also communicating that they wished they could have seen the supreme leader in a court. They would have wanted to see him answer for his crimes. I think they see the example of the capture of Nicolas Maduro from Venezuela and his transfer to a courtroom, and maybe hope that they would do the same thing. But it's complicated.
Thank you so much for guiding us through these complications. Gisou Nia from the Atlantic Council Strategic Litigation Project.
Thank you.